Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Taurus, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September 2024. I hope you are well. I'm using the Night Sun Tarot for you today. Just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. This deck is replete with nudity and YouTube doesn't like that very much. So if a card comes up that features some of that, and it is male and female, then I will very swiftly cover the card. I just want you to know that that's what I'm doing, thinking I'm doing something strange, because I cannot bring myself to scribble all over the cards like some people have. That works for them, doesn't work for me. So that's that. Also, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is via the first link in the description box, which is just underneath this video here that you're watching. The second link is to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee, and hang out with an extraordinary group of people who I would say far surpass myself in terms of their wisdom and their willingness to share. I'm willing to share what I've got, but like I don't know anywhere near as much as these people, and it's a really lovely little space. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with those links. Right, Taurus, let's flip the camera around and see what's going on with you. Could I have 3 cards for Taurus, please? Oh, there's the first one. We have recent past. It is the 9 of Swords, but it's not one that I find problematic, and I'll get into why that is in a minute. Tell me about current energy, please, for Scorpio. That's really interesting. I'm reading for Taurus, not Scorpio, but I did just notice that the Death card was at the bottom of the deck, so obviously I've just fluffed that one. Right, I'm not taking all of these cards because these are far too many, but they do speak to the shifts and changes that are going on with you here, Taurus. Like, you seem to be connecting with a deeper truth, right? We see this both in the Sun and we see this with the Ace of Swords. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's your truth specifically, but it has more of a universal quality. It's like there's a clarity in the way that you see the world and your state within it, right? Your purpose within it, that has is preparing you with this Knight of Wands and this Tower to make sure that your resources are properly deployed where they need to be. Now remember that your resources can be anything. I mean, it can be anything that you have to invest becomes a resource. So your time, your care, your money, your effort, your love, your energy, your attention. All of this coming together to speak to the clarity that is currently permeating your existence, I think. It feels a little bit like coming out of a fog. Now, I'm going to put all of these cards back into the deck here. I'm going to shuffle this again. And then if any of those cards want to come out again and make another appearance, they're very welcome to do so. But for a general reading, there is far too many cards coming out in one position. So, current energy, please, for Taurus. Ooh. We have the Devil. Very interesting. Tell me what's coming towards Taurus for September, please. We've got the 4 of Pentacles in reverse. This is wonderful. And I shall say this about what is happening here for you. Right, this clarity comes at a cost. The cost is something that we usually shy away from. Right, just even the idea of cost is actually a cost. It's a price you're willing to pay. Because what is being lost here is not something ultimately that is of value to you. And I think that this clarity that we've been talking about already, it's coming up already. And I would take those cards that all came out together at the same time as being the wider picture that's playing out for you here. This transition is helping you move from one state to another. I mean, I can't help but think about, you know, Uranus being in your sign, as it has been since, what, 2018? Something like that. You know, we are moving into the last leg of that. It's happening very soon. I don't think he wants to leave without really ensuring that he's made his mark on changing what you are
prepared to accept and what you are prepared not to accept, but also what it is that you are looking for the rest of your days. What part you intend to play in this bigger storyline that's playing out for humanity right now, right? And I don't want to sound, dramatic or hubristic or anything like that. Like, my Mercury is in Leo, so I do tend to have a flair for the dramatic. But it really does feel like it's that significant. Now, let's get some clarifiers out, and then I'll tell you about the meditation that I did before I started recording, because I do feel like it is relevant to you. We've got the 9 of Wands in reverse, so double 9s there. Let's have a look. Oh, whoop. Okay, take that one. 5 of Pentacles. Tell me what the devil is here. Why is he here? Whoop. Ace of Swords. We've seen that card already. And the King of Cups. Interesting that we should have Scorpio in here already. When I mistakenly said Scorpio rather than Taurus. Intriguing. Why is the 4 of Pentacles here, please? Taurus. Wow. 4 of Swords. Double 9, double 4. Queen of Cups in reverse. Speaking of those things that we will accept and those things that we will not. Right. On the face of it, being as there is only one major arcana card on the table, it might feel a little bit like September is kind of quiet. But I think that's really only on the surface, because what we've got going on here is a really quite efficient taking care of business, Taurus. That's how I would explain what I'm seeing here. And it's touching everything that is at the root of you. The meditation that I did before I started your reading went like this. I just saw a scene. And the scene was the night sky. Now, the moon was present, but it was right over here. Like, it was to the back of me and to the left. And what I could see was stars, millions and millions of stars, just looking up at the night sky. And there was sometimes when the moon is out, it can actually wash out the sky, right? It's so bright that there are stars that are sitting there that we don't see. It's just washed out by the light of the moon. Because the moon was over here, it was like a huge expanse of pinpricks in the sky. And this sense of you dreaming of what could be was really, really strong. Now, just in addition to this, I pulled some cards for myself this morning from this really rather wonderful oracle deck by Terry Foss. And the message was a straightforward sentence. It was this: manifest celestial abundance. And after I came out of the meditation, just before I started this, and I drew these cards hours ago, I thought, I wonder if this was even a message for me, or whether this was a message for Taurus. Manifest celestial abundance. How do we go about that? By daring to dream, first. But secondly, by taking care of the things that are holding us back in the here and now, that stop us from dreaming as expansively as we would like to do. Now, a lot of what is happening here is about enabling you to do that. So, we have the 2 of Swords, a card that for me speaks about the things that we do not see about ourselves, right? The things that block us from making decisions that are, incredibly important for us in our progression moving forwards in life. This figure here, she's blindfolded, she's got her back to the moon, she's got her back to the water. We're talking about not really consulting emotions in the trying to make of a decision, which is purely intellectual, as demonstrated by the crossed swords here. And yet the intuition, symbolised by the moon, and the emotions, as symbolised by the water, are actually giving us the push that we need. Now, as an added layer to this card, it does feel to me that it's that resistance in making a decision and committing to something. Because if we consulted our emotions, if we consulted our intuition, we would realise that in some ways the decision is already made. but we don't want to accept it yet. Why would we not want to accept it? Well, generally, it's because there is something fear-based that is sitting at the bottom of it that is stopping us from doing that, right? It's like, don't move. At least you know where you are here, right? We're not exposing ourselves to something bigger, but you are getting a nudge, Taurus, and I'm feeling that quite strongly. You may not yet be able to articulate exactly what it is, but it's a nudge in a particular direction. You may only be able to see the first step in front of you, but I really would say that this process that I'm seeing here, from recent past to what is in front of you in September, is about navigating through that. Because this clarity that I'm talking about, that's a huge part of the broader overarching picture for Taurus. That clarity that I'm talking about is really starting to emerge here. Now, I said right at the beginning that this Nine of Swords was not something that I was concerned about. Generally speaking, it speaks to a lack of perspective. It can speak to, well, anything from mild concern right up to full-blown mental illness. It can talk to insomnia, it can talk to overthinking and anxiety and all those kind of things. And we're very used to that being the pervading message of the Nine of Swords. And, you know, where we go from there is that really very uncomfortable place of the Ten of Swords, right? We've got an ending, which is never easy for a fixed sign to negotiate anyway, right? We're all about consistency and whatnot. But this here, oh, I said I would cover up the nudity, didn't I? Right, I'm going to sit my little dog on the devil's boobies there, right? What Fabiola Strani has done with this is shift the meaning away from the perspective that things, you know, a perspective of catastrophization, of fear, of concerns that become bigger than we are and have us sitting in a place feeling like we can't do anything about them. It's shifted that around to look at it differently. So we have those nine swords that we're used to seeing, and they're here and they're in the ground, and the ground is actually bleeding. Let me hold this card up for you so you can see that, right? It's like realizing that you've been through so much. Like, your ground has literally bled with what has changed for you in the last few years, the way that you have changed yourself. And nevertheless, the focus of the card isn't the swords. It's this flower that is growing up between them, right? It's actually created the perfect environment for the flower to be able to climb and reach higher up, reach towards the sun. For me then, this Nine of Swords in particular becomes a daring to hope. A daring to hope that all of this might have meaning, and all of this might actually have been pushing you towards something that is better for you than where you have been before, no matter how much we resist change and we find change uncomfortable. Now, it's accompanied with the Nine of Wands, and like I said, we've got double nines here. Now, for me, nines are always talking about how we manage whatever it is, whichever suit it is that we represent. So here, it's about the management of mind, and the management of mind is the winning of the battle between despair and hope for you. I think Taurus is a kind of a sign that naturally looks onto the better side of life. Maybe this is the Venusian influence on your sign, right? But in the loss of luxury, in the loss of comfort, in the loss of ease, which is often the things that the Venus will represent, we can find ourselves really spiraling. This is saying that's not happening here, right? It's realistic. It's not of fantasy. It's realistic that we know that things can be better, that actually everything that we have been through has really meant something. And here, rather than feeling like we need to be guarded, that we need to defend ourselves at every opportunity, because we are, you know, consistently under attack, the Nine of Wands in reverse is saying, I am actually comfortable to come out here in the world as I am. It's okay. I don't need to be constantly waiting for the next attack, the next ambush. Out here, alone, I'm bigger than my problems, and I allow myself to think that. We've got the Five of Pentacles. And I actually really like this because this is a Taurus card, and it's a very uncomfortable card. It talks about poverty, and that can be of anything, because like I was saying about the Pentacles before, which Pentacle card was it that came up? I forget. In the first set of cards. Anything that you can invest becomes a pentacle. Time, care, effort, money, love, energy, attention. Where the Five of Pentacles is in play, it's saying whatever we have previously invested all of our pentacles in, it actually wasn't really addressing the root cause of what we needed. Ergo, something about our basic needs is not being met, was not being met by how we did things before. You know, we were a product of our conditioning, and we repeated that cycle over and over again until we reached a point of illumination. We dealt with the dark stuff. We pushed through, we persevered, and we are emerging out of the other side. You know, this Five of Pentacles, despite being something that I feel strikes fear into the heart of Taurus, this realization that you don't need to defend against that, because everything that is valuable exists within, not without. And so with that comes the idea that things outside of us can change, can evolve, can flow, can have a little bit more fluidity than we previously have allowed in life. You know, maybe that's shown up previously in things like control issues, you know, or getting triggered by other people. I mean, we do that a lot, right? Feeling that sense of threat by people kind of going about their own business, because we internalized it. And it's kind of like, what does it say about us that we can't be doing these things? You know, what's it saying about us that we cannot completely control this little corner of the environment, this corner of the world rather, that we live in? It's quite interesting. I was having a conversation with a Taurus friend of mine, and I've spoken before, it might have been earlier this year, possibly it might have been last year, about how often I'd wondered why it was that Taurus specifically from 2020 seemed to be being called on to level up so fast. Now, part of this in retrospect, and I was completely oblivious to astrology at that point, could be well explained by Uranus being in your sign since 2018. There would be a rapid level up where Uranus is involved. But I also think that because Taurus is the point of contact for the entire zodiac with the Earth, with this material plane, that any kind of seismic shift is going to be felt by Taurus first. And because Tauruses take much longer to adjust and adapt and flow and all these kind of things, right, there's a longer time frame that is needed to complete this. Right, very different situation for, say, Sagittarius, who literally by definition is just pivoting here, there and everywhere. And indeed their lesson has been about understanding where to dig in, which was very, very uncomfortable for Sagittarians. Nevertheless, they are chopping wood and they are carrying water, something that Taurians know innately how to do. But latterly I've started to wonder in the last few days if this adjustment, to put it mildly, that Taurus has been going through for the last 6 years, isn't just about making sure that on the other side of the transition from one paradigm to another, which is what we're undergoing at the moment, that there is something fixed to ground us to whatever the future may hold. That also an awareness of what truly is valuable goes with it. We're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? The baby is important, the baby is coming as well. And it's taken a lot more work to get to the point where the baby can come. And by what do I mean by baby? I mean core values. I mean things that are so valuable that they should not be lost. Integrity, whatever, autonomy, sovereignty, all these sorts of things. And what Taurus has been through is a really, really difficult lesson in that true perseverance through all things, including the things that they were fucking terrified of, in order that they be able to resituate themselves in the new paradigm and be there to support everybody else as they come through. Now, generally speaking, when I talk about the recent past, we're not really going back any more than 6 weeks. And I understand that what I've just been talking about has been something that's been, hitherto 6 years in the making. But I do feel like corners are being turned here by Taurus. Maybe emergence is happening for Taurus, where you're much more comfortable in yourself. I was listening to just going to go on a little side quest here for a second, Taurus. I was listening to a short video the other day on X about mimetic desire. How nobody really actually wants anything truly. What they want is what essentially everybody else tells them has value. And there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's essentially what it boiled down to. And as I'm sitting here talking to you, I wonder if there are such things not just as mimetic desire, but also mimetic values and mimetic... well, of course there would be, because that's what culture is. We talked a lot around 2020, 2021 about how Taurus was separating itself from the herd for no reason other than to be able to find themselves, to understand themselves by way of reference only to themselves and what they feel and what they've experienced and all that sort of thing, rather than the psychology of crowds, the psychology of the collective. And where you are now is someone who deeply understands what they stand for, what they find valuable, that is compelled or driven considerably less by fear than they ever have been in their life. And this message of clarity that keeps coming up again and again and again for you is not an instant overnight process. It's the result of time and experience creating wisdom, which, as we know, is something that is slowly accrued and is always evolving. Sometimes it's quite difficult to see where we sit on the scale of wisdom, except by reference to everybody else. But what I'm feeling here for you, Taurus, is that you are standing so strong in what you believe, whether or not that flows with what everybody else is thinking, such that it's creating almost like a protective bubble of authenticity around you. Like I said, you're not afraid of whatever this is anymore. There are no problems that are put in your way that you cannot rise to meet. And I think ultimately, when we have big fears about things, it's because there's just the merest possibility that this will be the thing that crushes us. This will be the thing that smashes us back down into the dirt. And I do think with the experiences that you've had, Taurus, since Uranus entered your sign, some of them can be brutal. I have to say, I've done enough readings with Tauruses to see that. These very difficult experiences that you've had have created a character that is so strong, so resilient, and so sovereign, that you are shifting from merely a passive participant within the herd to leader. And I've said this a lot about Taurus, leader, teacher, these sorts of things, and lots of Tauruses have flinched away from that as a proposition over the last few years. But I think what's changing is the acceptance of that, in so much as you are now demonstrating it. You're not just, not flinching away from me when I talk about it. This is something that you've been thinking about. And sometimes it's quite difficult to know what it is that we hold within us that's worth sharing with other people. But I think in this instance, because of the degree of separation that you've managed to achieve while you've been in the process of working out who you are, when you turn around and you look at the crowd, you look at the collective, the problems, the issues, the lack of self-awareness is so screamingly obvious that it's becoming much clearer what it is that you would do. Leading by example has always been a big thing that I've associated with Taurus, because not everybody is made for standing on a soapbox and just dispensing wisdom. Tauruses also being very solution-oriented thinkers, quite often you need to be presented with a problem that needs fixing. And then you come up with something really genius to resolve them. Tauruses are very resourceful like that. But you're moving into something that is much more inspirational, I think. And you're owning it. That's the difference. That's the important bit here. Now, when we come to your current energy and we have the devil, I don't actually feel like the devil's really uncomfortable here. I wonder if the devil in this situation is actually representing Pluto. Now, there's nowhere near your sign at the moment, but as a transpersonal planet, a generational planet, the movements of the outer planets affect the collective en masse. So, you know, wherever Pluto is in your chart, it's currently, as I'm recording this, in Aquarius. But in the next few days, it will be retrograding back into Capricorn, where he will sit for 79 days on the anaretic degree. There are big changes afoot here. And because it's Pluto, we're talking about digging up something really deep within us that's coming up to the surface. Pluto rules all those things that are beneath the surface. Before we move into Aquarius proper, which is going to square you, right? Whatever you've got in Taurus is going to be squared at least by house with whatever's going on in Aquarius, forcing more growth, whether you like it or not. But I feel like there are critical decisions that are sort of on the table that you are not yet engaging with, Taurus. Like, they're there, they need addressing, they need looking at. But perhaps this period where Pluto moves back into the sign of Capricorn is going to pull up several things for you. First, there is the addressing of the issues, right? The nudges that I've been feeling from the universe that are kind of very subtly pushing on you at the moment. Or for some of you, this may not be a subtle energy. This may actually be something really, really strong. And a recognition of what you fear about making this decision and how you can completely overcome it, right? We've got the Ace of Swords, which is a whole new perspective quite often. It's the energy of epiphanies. It's the energy of, you know, really genius ideas. But where these all come together is to connect things that we did not see before, particularly in the area of the things that we fear and therefore, you know, what is holding us back. But also our next steps forwards, and how this has the effect of completely changing our outlook about ourselves, about our purpose here, our mission here, and the nature of the things that frighten us, whether or not they hold any kind of substance. Because I think, Taurus, like, you're kind of looking around and you're like, well, yeah, in the first instance, I'm feeling that little bite of the fear. But when I turn around to look at it, it's almost like it dissolves in front of me. You know, whenever the King of Cups shows up, this is an emotional maturation. Be under no illusions, right? We're showing up stronger in our emotions, more solid in our emotions. We're showing up in such a way that we can't be dislodged by the power of our own emotions, right? They become something that we are able to control. They become something that, you know, inform but do not compel, because we can always choose to do something else. And the more uncomfortable that we are in a situation, generally, the more growth is offered to us in that state. Well, that's how it comes to mean extensive maturation for me. It is also your opposite sign on the zodiac, which is Scorpio. speaking of birth and death, or rebirth and death, right? The ends of cycles and the beginnings of new ones. There's a clarity here about all of these that is weaving together. And like I said, what I do feel that is sitting on the table that is not yet quite in front of you, asking for you to adjudicate on this immediately, are these bigger senses of life-changing decisions that are not too far ahead. Now, when we move into what's coming towards you in September, we have the Four of Pentacles reversed, we have the Four of Swords on its side, and we have the Four of Cups. Now, the Four of Swords on its side, if I can just address that first. When cards fall in this way, for me they mean one of two things. That is either that the energy is on the turn, so we're moving from reversed to upright or upright to reversed, or the energy has not yet committed to one way or another. It's like some other stuff needs to go down first before it decides which way it's turning. For you, I actually do feel like this energy is on the turn. So much of what you've worked through over the last few years has required you to be completely objective about the foundations that have created you. And that's been confrontational in a lot of ways, because for years I've been reading for Tauruses, right? And when we get to talking about their family life, their early life, to man, stroke woman, every single Taurus will adopt the same face, right? And it's a face of suppressed pain. And they will not shit-talk their parents. They will not do it. It's absolutely fascinating. Not that I think that shit-talking parents is a good idea, right? But every single time, they're like, they did the best that they could. They really tried hard. They put so much effort into this, that, and the other. But when you dig, and when you kind of slowly move all of that stuff away, there's always one thing that's sitting at the bottom of that. And it's that they didn't get what they needed. In some way or another, they felt unseen. They felt undervalued. They were taught that their value was something other than simply them. We see this here in the Four of Cups. And because you've had to objectively look at your past and say, whilst it is true that my early life involved adults who were doing their best under very difficult circumstances, it is also true that the emotional modelling that I was then, being trained to follow in my later life was insufficient. It wasn't very good. It wasn't very well set up for me as a Taurus showing up here in the world at this time. And that's okay. We're not blaming the parents. We're understanding that part of your parents' job is to instill the issues in you that need to be worked through in order for you personally to progress. In order to do that, there's been a lot of thinking. There's been a lot of need for an objective retreat away from the big emotions that we've tried not to acknowledge, to picking things apart and seeing them really for what they are. Emotional maturation. I feel like this is on the turn. I feel that it is going from the upright, which is taking a break, taking a step back, employing that objectivity, to, in the next month or so, after September, being replaced by action. It's like we've had the time to cogitate and ruminate and heal and do all those things, but now there's a push towards action. There's a push towards synthesizing all of the things that you have learned, the wisdom that you have accrued, this emotional strength that you have developed, and turning it into something that actually supports and holds you in future. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, we could be seeing Tauruses making big decisions about where they live, maybe even who they live with, what country they live in, what they do for a living. I'm talking about a big change in the offing here for you, Taurus. And maybe as I'm signalling it a little bit early, because for some Tauruses, right, that level of change might be something incomprehensible at this point. But I do think that what's been going on with you here, right, the distillation of everything down to actually what is true, rather than what is being emotionally reacted to, is putting you in a place that is best equipping you to make some sort of significant move. At least start thinking about it before the end of the year. That for me feels very, very strong, because there comes a point in our lives where we start looking at our past and, you know, questioning ourselves, like, have I really been the hero in my own story? Or have I consistently and persistently projected, just as I see everybody else do now? Have I consistently acted out of a state of fear rather than a state of true creative potential? And it hits people usually sometime in their 30s or their 40s or whatever, when they're kind of looking back and going, okay, there's some work to do here. It's always been preceded by a desire to try and maintain the status quo, until it comes to a point where we just can't do that anymore, and we realise that our own internal narrative needs to change. You've done that. The time for translating that into action is not quite here, but it's very, very close. Because this Four of Pentacles here is about a release of something. Now, all cards are multivalent, and they mean different things in different positions, and, you know, whether they're upright, whether they're reversed, what are the accompanying cards. But where the Four of Pentacles talks about really holding on to something, for good or for ill, you know, whatever. The Four of Pentacles is a release of the past. It's a release of the foundation. It's a release of all the things that need to end, that no longer form part of where we're going. They were exceedingly useful in giving you the tools, or at least the database of experiences to scan, to grow. But they fulfilled their part, and now it's time to move on. September, I think, is the gentle confrontation of that energy coming through your life, where you might be looking around and going, I don't recognise where I live anymore. You know, maybe the crime's gone up. Maybe the sense of community's gone, right? The things that hold you in place, the things that make where you live, you know, a valuable contribution to your life, and that you may also wish to, you know, participate strongly in. And maybe that's disappeared. Maybe your job doesn't do anything for you anymore. Maybe you're sick of working for other people, making other people money and whatnot. Maybe you look at a relationship that you have been in for decades, and you're like, there's a familiarity here. There's a shared history here. But is the future going to be more of the same? Now, I don't feel a sense of pain in any of these questions that you are asking yourself in September, Taurus. I feel like it's a sifting process. Ultimately distilling everything down to what represents value to you. You know, the intangible value that is brought to your life, that can be tangibly expressed by some sort of shift. It's coming, Taurus. But first, you have to relieve yourself of the concrete boots. And I think you're ready to do that. I really do think that you're ready to do that. Because the action is coming. But there has to be a line in the sand, I think, where you truly put your needs first. And the extent to which you allow yourself to absorb the divisive opinions, emotions, the judgments, the projections of other people. It's all just falling away. It's like, I'm not accepting this anymore. Maybe some of you are going to go on a social media detox and start looking around and, you know, looking at the evidence of your own eyes and ears and saying, is this what represents value to me? This job, this 9 to 5, this area, this house, whatever it is. There is a fundamental, like, of the nature of things that are fundamental, right? Everything to do with the 4th house, everything to do with our foundation of our character, of our personality, but also of our material world, that is slowly moving across the table. And at some point it's going to come into contact with your fingers, and you are going to be asked to make that decision about what that is. It's not quite there yet, but I would not be surprised if we are really focusing on this in the month of October. If I were to give you any advice at all, it would be to probably what I've already said. Go on a social media detox, go on a news detox, go on an everything detox. Get yourself outside and go and have a walk. Consider what you think is valuable. Is it being reflected to you by your current material environment? Think about the values that you hold. Are they being reflected back to you by your community, by your work colleagues, by your boss? Taurus is very used now to responding to crisis, because Uranus has brought crisis after crisis after crisis for all of you. Like I said, it's been a very brutal transit. But what happens from here on out is not a crisis-inspired reaction. It is a value-driven action. And those are very, very different. This is really interesting. This is canny fucking deep, actually, Taurus. I like. We're going to go over to the extended now, and we're going to talk about September in detail, because I think there's probably going to be a few moving parts that are all going to come together to push you, push this decision across the table at you. And I want to dig into that. So if you would like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Circle, or you can do that on Vimeo. The links for both, as I said at the beginning, are in the description box. If that's not to your liking, that's absolutely fine. Just know that there's a sense of the last pieces all moving into position. And once they have, you'll perceive a picture that I think is probably not to your liking. But rather than sending you into a state of distress or despair about this, it's like, well, I know I'm bigger than any problem that's come along, so what am I going to do about this? I'm going to change it. Like I said, everything just moving into position for you. Alright, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.